And now for Newsmakers, our weekly discussion of the news agenda. Well, I'm joined by Patricia Forsyth, who's the Executive Director of the Sydney Business Chamber, and former Liberal MLC in New South Wales, and Simon Sheikh, who's the National Director of the community advocacy group Get Up. Welcome to you both, and thanks so much for coming in this Saturday. Firstly, to the biggest story of the week. It's the rescue of Chile's miners, as no one could really forget. The world watched as each of the miners was brought to the surface. Let's first hear from the President of Chile, Sebastián Piñera.
And this proves that Chile today was in the hearts not only of all Chileans and Latin Americans, but we were in the heart of the whole world. And I think we showed the world the best of Chile, our unity, our comradeship, the capacity to work as a team, and our faith. And this is why it has been such a moving night.
Chile's president there. Well, first of all, Simon Sheikh, if I can start with you, does this show how globalised our news is these days?
I think it does in some way. There's about a third of the world, I guess, that have access to some form of fast news source. And what a wonderful thing that at least for that third, we were all watching the same story at the same time. It's extraordinary to think about the fact that 1 billion people or more around the world will have been tuned in some way to this story. It really brings us together, especially in a time of such global conflict. To see technology being used for good is just such a wonderful thing.
Patricia Forsyth, did you watch? Were you enthralled, or did you think it was a bit of overkill?
Oh, no, I don't think it was overkill. This was a human interest story that was clearly going to capture all of us who could have
and a rare
access
good
to
news story, wasn't it?
Not only a rare good news story, but a real insight to how people would cope under that sort of adversity, the period of time they were underground. These are going to be the most studied group of people. It's not going to end for them really forever. But I think as a community, yes, as Simon said, a rare piece of good news, but a piece of such interesting human story that of course would capture people.
I wonder whether after this is all over we're going to, in a sense, forget about the psychological trauma that many of them must be going through, because cameras often focus on the big event, but then all the reporters leave after that.
It's the nature of the 24-hour news cycle, and it's not an Australian thing. Here we are on ABC 24. It's really a global phenomenon right now. I think, though, that there will be many in society who will help us remember. I imagine that academics will be scrambling right now to try and get some kinds of contracts to study these people into the future and the effects on these people. So I don't think it's the last we'll hear of it. Generally, these big news stories do crop up from time to time, clearly without the same level, though, of coverage.
Is there anything we can learn from the event, do you think?
Well, certainly, I mean, we are going to learn about how people cope when they're confined in that sort of dimension in space and time, and how they were talked through, the fact that they brought the psychologists in. This seemed to be a very well managed process. Once they'd identified them, where they were, and the teams they brought through, and we know it wasn't only from Chile, but they brought in experts from around the world. Australia played a part. I think the message in all of this is that, and for a country like Chile, they now will be able to say to the world that they could manage an operation like this. It's given them an esteem that they might not otherwise have had. More generally, of course, mine safety is one of those issues that bedevils many countries, and we know that Australia gives a lot of advice. We are probably a leader. We are the world's leader in much of this, and no doubt that will be part of what will play out into the future as well.
Well, in Cairns, a couple was found not guilty of carrying out an illegal abortion, and that sparked calls for Queensland's abortion laws to be overhauled. In Queensland, abortion is illegal unless there's a serious risk to the woman's physical and mental well-being. Well, pro- and anti-abortion activists protested outside the court. Let's hear from two of them now.
12 citizens of Cairns have thought about this carefully, and they do not believe that this law is appropriate to be applied in 2010. And I think that the government should listen to what they have said.
In terms of the law in Queensland, that thin veneer of hope for women who are being pressured into abortion, it will now be gone if the pro-abortion lobby get their way.
Well, Simon Sheikh, I believe Get Up is actually running a campaign on abortion at the moment. What's your response, first of all, to the outcome of this trial?
Well, the outcome of this trial still leaves a level of uncertainty for other women in Queensland. When abortion is criminal, then the women who seek abortions are treated like criminals. And surely in Australia, no woman should be treated like a criminal for making a personal decision. It's extraordinary that off the back of this case, both major parties are still refusing to change the law. They're still united in refusing to change the law. The Conservative opinion here, if we look to that as an example, the Conservative opinion here is that abortion should be safe and legal. That's an opinion offered by Tony Abbott, for example, and so many others. And yet what we see is such a small group of Queenslanders, in particular in that state, some 6,000 people or so we estimate them to be, who are actively part of a campaign trying to get these laws to stay. The jury found that these laws don't make sense, that they found a way through them, luckily for these two young people. But what about all the others who are still facing huge degrees of uncertainty?
Queensland's Premier Anna Bligh actually said that she would support decriminalisation, but that the majority of MPs in Queensland would not. I mean, what does that say about the state when the leader wants the change, but obviously she knows she's not going to get the numbers?
Well, I can say from experience, having been through a number of abortion debates in the New South Wales Parliament, they are very difficult times. Civility often goes out the window, and we get a lot of mail that's difficult to deal with because it inflames passion. So I can understand that we don't want to rock the boat idea, but the reality is we've seen a young couple put through 2 years of their name being in the media, of very serious allegations being made, and I think it's shown, even though they've been shown not to be guilty and that they didn't act, certainly they didn't believe they were doing anything that was
somehow
criminal.
They've been demonised,
yes,
haven't they?
That the legislation, it really now needs to be readdressed. I can understand where the politicians want to go, don't rock the boat, but frankly, the legislation is now deficient. It used to be because you had the protection of doctors being able to give advice about your health or the health of a baby. Now with the drugs that are available, as this couple had thought they'd acted legally, they didn't really need that doctor's advice to be able to take some action.
Is one of the problems, though, that religion is mixed up with an ethical argument? Is it about the religious debate capturing this issue, do you think?
There are so many in the Christian community who think these laws should be changed. We have so many Get Up members who've been telling us in the last few days that they really are disgusted with the position of the Australian Christian lobby. It really is only a subset of the religious community, not the religious community as a whole, who have an opinion and a driving part of this debate. That's why it's so crucial that in particular members of the religious community stand up for their own opinion, because they aren't being properly represented by the leadership of the Australian Christian lobby at the moment.
And I think that's one of the reasons that MPs find it difficult. Many active Christians would have taken a position in support of the decriminalised legislation and opposing strengthening laws about abortion, would be active Christian, but they were being demonised in a way that upset people's own reputations. So when you say Christian lobby, you've got to understand, I think as Simon made the point, it is a subset within it. And I always took comfort from some very wise people in the Organisational Liberal Party, a few women who'd been through some of this experience, but who in all other things were seen as wise leaders, good counsel, and they were able to give me their personal views, and I think that sustained me in some pretty difficult debates. Okay,
let's try to move on to a slightly lighter issue now. If you want to have good mental health, you need a job that satisfies you, according to an ANU study. In fact, people who move from unemployment into poor quality jobs were much more likely to be depressed than those who remain unemployed. Is that surprising? I mean, what we know about life and jobs, our jobs are very important to us, aren't they? And we want satisfaction from them.
We do want satisfaction from them. It's interesting. Mental health is a really important issue. We know that, and yet for so long we've been keeping it in the too hard basket. It's about 6% of our healthcare budget, and yet it's about 13% of our healthcare burden. There's an interesting theory, though, here that we can take from psychology. It's called the Line of Contentment, and the Line of Contentment suggests that, for example, when you're unemployed, you're on the baseline. You're encouraged, and so you get all of your basic needs met, or at least you should in Australia. And yet when you move from unemployment into poor work, what you see is demonisation. You get demonised in the workplace. You're worried about job security, one of the particular elements of the research that's just come out. And so herein lies the role for government. It's so crucial that when we have this debate, we think about how we can measure job satisfaction in a way that goes far beyond just income sources that come from jobs. That's why it's so crucial that the unions, for example, they've been calling for years for better job security arrangements in this country. There is a role for government, I think, to play, and this research highlights that.
What about at the big end of the market, Patricia Forsyth? I mean, people are paid a lot of money in some roles, but do they necessarily get satisfaction out of what they do just because they're paid big money?
Oh, I don't know that money is the basis upon which people's own satisfaction might come, but it will be, whether you're getting something out of the job. I mean, lots of people love what they do, and it's such a pity that not everybody can get that same level of enjoyment. And you can see the difference in people's faces. People who, skip along to work because it's something to do. So you can see why what psychologists have said would certainly be just backed up by looking at communities. But it's why business takes a real interest in the occupational health and safety of their employees these days.
All right. Many thanks for that.
Thanks, Jane.
For joining us, Patricia Forsyth and Simon Sheikh. It's been a pleasure having you.